Welcome to Brave Together Parenting, an empowering and truly helpful podcast for the parents of children with disabilities and all unique needs. Hilarie, what do families do if they're experiencing pushback from their doctors, pediatrician, dietitian, nutritionist in their life, and they want to try a blenderized diet?
Yeah, that's really hard because I think often that families are made to feel like they're doing something wrong when their intuition is telling them that this is what they want to do for their child. And so, especially too, when you think your medical professional is the one that knows everything and you just feel like if they're telling you it's wrong, then you're feeling like you're going rogue. And that just adds a whole nother layer of stress and overwhelm that's not necessary. So I think it's really helpful to share resources with them that debunk some of these myths that they're being told, that you'll clog a feeding tube, or it's not safe from a food safety perspective, or it's too hard to meet nutrient needs. Again, I have another free article on this because I get this question all the time that provides those research articles to just show that, especially with food safety, it's not any riskier that it's going through a feeding tube. Just because it's going through a feeding tube instead of by mouth does not make that food spoil. You know what I mean? So it's just how you handle the food, follow safe food handling practices, don't leave food out too long. If you're using a pump, sometimes that meal is a little bit longer. And so that can be some concern. You don't want the food to be out too long, but using a very smart parents who had to kind of jerry-rig things together have amazing Etsy shops, and there's insulated food pouches that can keep your feeding bag cold. So there's a lot of ways to make sure that you're doing this safely. But I think the main thing that comes up is that it's too hard to meet nutrient needs. I think this comes from clinicians feeling like with formula, if that formula is not providing all their child's nutrition because they're getting the same thing every single day, it would cause a deficiency. If that formula didn't have enough vitamin D in it, then they would get a vitamin D deficiency. But that's not the same thing with real food, where it offers this just the flexibility to meet nutrient needs over time. None of us who eat by mouth are trying to get every nutrient in every single day. I don't even know if I get all my nutrients in over time at all. I think tube feeders are just held to a higher standard, unfortunately. So I'm saying all this to say we recognize that it's hard because it's really hard to push back against clinicians who have been taught this way, and it's hard to convince them of something else. But all of the research points to that it's not harder to meet nutrient needs if you have the right approach. You're not going to clog a feeding tube. So I think sharing some of these research articles can be really helpful. And again, I have a resource that can help families with that. But the nutrient needs thing, I think the way that I found it the most helpful for families is to have those recipes that have that same calorie range as formula, because then clinicians can see, okay, you were using a 1.5 cal formula. These are 1.5 cal recipes. So they're meeting their calorie needs. And often when they see the foods that you're blending, it shows them they're getting a lot more variety than most kids who are often eating the brown diet of dino nuggets and, just eating, they're more picky. So I think just showing clinicians that it is safe, using the research can be helpful. And then really too, if we can there's always a divide, if you're getting a lot of pushback and you feel like you need to, in a way, do your own thing. And then clinicians aren't even hearing that it is improving things for you. So just being open with your clinician about what you're doing, and if you do have benefits or noticing benefits, if you can share that with them, I think that only helps the next family. Of course, you do not have to do that. You do not have to be the advocate if you don't have the energy to do that. But
right.
If you are feeling like you are having a good experience, I think sharing that a little bit with the clinician can be helpful, and you're likely to help a lot more families that are interested in and going to ask that same clinician again in the future.
Thanks so much for listening today. Do us a favor and leave us a review and a rating so that this podcast can get into the ears and the hearts of more and more moms. Did you know that Brave Together Parenting podcast is an extension of our nonprofit organization, We Are Brave Together? We Are Brave Together serves an international community of caregiving moms, offering support groups that are virtual and in-person, educational resources, and low-cost weekend retreats. And And we have published our first anthology of caregiving stories entitled Becoming Brave Together, Heroic, Extraordinary Caregiving Stories from Mothers Hidden in Plain Sight. It will encourage and validate every parent caregiver. To join us today, go to wearebravetogether.org. Our support and sisterhood awaits you. Brave Together Parenting Podcast is for entertainment and education purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional care and should not be relied on for medical or mental health advice. The use of any content on our podcast, links, show notes, or on our website is to be done at your own personal risk. Please seek out a professional to assess your own medical or mental health concerns because we are all beautifully complex and the content of this podcast is for a broad audience.